Welcome. Today we're going to be discussing the technique sleeper, some of the problems that can arise during its execution, and how to fix or compensate those problems that arise. So, first thing we want to discuss is rule number one, establishing a base and what happens. The guy begins to throw his punch. This is the ideal phase. He's doing a right step through punch. Notice his left hand. His left hand could be in a variety of different positions. It could be covering his low zone, middle zone, or high zone, or it could be hanging directly to the side. What this technique will cover is either hanging at the side, low zone, or up to the middle zone, but not into the high zone. So take that into consideration that if this hand was up higher, we wouldn't be able to do this technique, and there's really no compensation other than to move on to something else. So as we're establishing our base here, the first thing we need to worry about is how far we step and how we're stepping. So as we step, what we don't want to do is step too deep, because what that is doing is leaving myself open to get hit, which we call straddling the paddle. So general rule is never straddle the paddle, or never step beyond your opponent's front heel. So what that means is my heel should never go beyond his heel. I can step all the way up to his heel, but not beyond, and before I can step up to also. So let's do that one more time. So as he throws this, I'm still not going to throw what I'm doing here. I just want to show you, as we step, we want to step straight into this guy. We don't want to gap, leave the gap, or gap deep. Either one of those would leave me open in order to get countered against. So now that we have that in place, let's talk about what's happening up here at the top. The direction is very important here. There's a general rule that says, in order to beat action, meet action. So what we want to do in order to do that is to go forward at a 45-degree angle, or to 130 in this case. We do not want to go to 3 o'clock. One of the main reasons we don't want to go to 3 o'clock, other than in order to beat action, meet action rule, is because the chances are we're going to hit him below his elbow. And if we do that, we're going to have his elbow come back to hit us. Or we don't want to get hit by his elbow. Because remember that general rule that we've talked about many times. When you're on the outside of the arm, you want to be at or above the elbow. When you're on the inside of the arm, you want to be at or below the elbow. So since now we're on the outside of the arm, we have to be at or above the elbow. So let's do that one more time. So as he comes in, we want to do the block. Notice I hit at the elbow, and as we begin to close on each other, I go way above the elbow. Okay? So now what's happening with my right hand? What I want to do is I want to keep my right hand to the obscure zone of obscurity. So what that means is he really can't see my right hand. So now the next problem that can happen is the path that I take in order to do the next strike. The next strike is going to be hitting here on the neck with a ridge hand. So if I take an arcing path, which means coming away from his body and around, I've done a block here, and I started moving his hand in the direction of where I'm going to be striking to next. So what would commonly happen if I take this arcing route is I'm causing my own block. So I'm causing myself to be blocked just by hitting his hand in the direction that I'm going to be striking. So in order to avoid that, if I begin to do that again, notice that there's a line here that's still open. It's contouring up the body and then turning at the last second to deliver the strike. The strike gets anywhere below the earlobe on the neck, behind the jaw is the place that you want to hit. You could theoretically hit anywhere on the face, but we want to hit to the neck area. And what we want to hit with is what's called a ridge hand. Ridge hand could be hit anywhere from the wrist bone all the way up to the first knuckle of your index finger, typically within the joint of your thumb. So as you go forward, we get the block, we get the strike. Okay? This theoretically could knock him out. If it doesn't, we have a follow-up, which is another lock. And that lock can be done one of two, or choke, that can be done one of two ways. The first way, the most common way, is to bring your hand up and around and to grab your own hand. Okay, so let's spin around so that you can see that a little bit better. So what that does is, as I grab my hand, I don't want to grab like I would grab a ball. What I want to do is keep my thumb in, grab my own hand, I want to step up behind, and I want to pull him to me, and to where I can start choking him out. The second of the two is I just come right from my lock, come straight up my arm as I come up behind, and I push my two arms together, closing my open-ended triangle. This is my open-ended triangle, closing it, squeezing both sides of his neck, and you can see that it does actually work well. Now notice what I'm doing with my lower body. I am not gapping over here. The reason why I don't gap over here is because that leaves him a chance to move against me. Remember, we like maintaining our levers and keeping our levers while taking away his levers. So in this case, what I want to do is not gap, and I want to apply my lock. Okay, so let's go back around so that you can see from the other side. So let's step up again, get our strike. So now from here, what we're doing is we're coming up, back of the knee to back of the knee. Notice the legs are touching, there's no gapping like I just said earlier, and I'm up on the ball of my foot. Now, let's talk about the top first. What happened here is we get this choke. What I want to do is I want to use my hand as a pivot point as I begin to drop my elbow onto his chest. Notice what happens. So as I do that strike, notice how he begins to bend backwards. So now what I want to do simultaneously with that is the buckle from the bottom. So that's going to cause him to flatten out and almost fall to the ground immediately. So I'm going to do it slow and not control him so that you can see the result. So what happens here is this. It's going to knock him right to the floor. One of the things that are alternate to this that could cause you a problem is instead of doing this buckle from the top, I begin to do a throw. So I get in here nice and tight and I begin to throw him to the floor rather than take him to the floor with a buckle. If I do the throw, we have to watch out for a trained individual who might want to grab my arm at the same time. And what happens if you do that, if I begin to try to throw him to the floor and he grabs my arm, he can reorbit back to hit me. So you have to be careful of a person who's trained in either jiu-jitsu or wrestling. They'll immediately do that to you if you haven't knocked them out. So to compensate for that, what we do is the buckling version. Take him down that way, okay? So notice what happens here. He's going to go down no matter what. So all we want to do in the technique is control how he falls. So as we do that, what's happening here is I do the buckle. Notice my left hand is now on his right hand. So as I begin to buckle him down, all I want to do is keep my left hand on his right hand. So now here, there's a couple different options that can happen. The ideal phase is to just continue to press the arm to the body, drop a knee under the ribs, and then punch him into the face. There's an alternate version of this. If you want, just like we do in other techniques, I can control the hand, lock it up, drop the knee, and then punch in the face. And the reason why the knee would be important here is because if I begin to do this lock and I don't have the knee, he can spin out and counter back to me. So remember the two different options are either pin, knee, punch, or start to roll the arm to lock it up, knee, punch. So the knee in the second case would stop him from spinning out. The knee in the first case is just to drop onto the ribs and hurt him. So let's walk through this all one more time, going over some of the things that we discussed. First thing, establish your base. Don't straddle the paddle, either too wide or too deep, leaving yourself open. Second thing is make sure you block on the 130 line, or in other words, in order to beat action, meet action, stand at or above the elbow, not below the elbow. Don't take an arc that's wide, contour the body up from the zone of obscurity, and then turn at the last second to hit. Next thing what we want to do is we're going to step behind. We can either come on both sides or on the outside on one side and do the choke out, or we can do either one. Either one is just as effective. The next thing we want to do is make sure that on our bottom end, as we're doing this choke out, we don't leave a gap up here so that we can be used against us and take our lever away. We want to maintain him slightly off balance as we do that. The next thing we want to do is make sure that we do the elbow, which uses the hand as a pivot point, and the dropping of the heel for the buckle at the same time, simultaneously with one another. We want to control the grunt as we take him to the ground. We want to press down, drop the knee, do the punch, or control knee punch. And the last thing that we want to worry about doing is not throwing him so that we don't have a reorbit back to hit us. Okay? So let's do it slightly faster so you can see it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cross out if you wish when you're done. Hope this video helps you. Thank you very much.